Welcome, guys. I appreciate you taking some time on Wednesday afternoon to hang out with us. This workshop is, like I said, focused on helping you understand how recruiters find top talent for their open roles so that you can better position yourself for the roles that you want. Come on, there we go. Okay. So I'm Sarah. I'm an executive recruiter and founder of Bayview Talent, which is a search firm focused on scaling go-to-market teams at early stage startups. And with me, I have the lovely Christine, who has been a leader at several notable startups and has since founded her own consulting firm and also shares career advice with her substantial following on TikTok. And she's just been an amazing partner in helping me create a lot of these resources for you guys. So, Christine, is there anything you want to add?
I'm just excited to learn because I feel like there are even new tips in here that I haven't seen yet. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, cool. So I don't need to tell you guys that the job market is tough, right? Most candidates report that it takes at least 100 applications to get one interview. And people are getting rejected from jobs even when they meet all of the qualifications. And this can have a huge impact, not just on your wallet, but also on your psyche. And I can feel it when I talk to candidates, even the ones who try to put on a brave face or are still employed are really worried about the future. And as someone who sits between the candidate and the companies that are hiring, I've come to realize something pretty profound, and that is that recruiting has changed. But candidates are still getting the same old advice, and it doesn't work anymore, obviously, or there wouldn't be so much confusion and stress. It used to be all about the resume, right? And the first resume ever written was actually credited to Leonardo da Vinci back in 1482. He was trying to get the Duke of Milan to hire him for an engineering position. And he didn't actually end up getting the role. But over time, the resume became an absolute must-have for professional roles. And a whole industry of resume writers was born. There are many of them still out there who would love to charge you hundreds of dollars to rewrite your resume. But these days, the people that you need to get in front of, recruiters and hiring managers, aren't looking at your resume. They're looking at your LinkedIn. Oh, that's supposed to be a heart. It's supposed to say recruiters love LinkedIn because we do. And I swear LinkedIn doesn't pay me, even though I endorse them so heavily. Because LinkedIn serves as a massive database of candidates with all different backgrounds and areas of expertise. And one of the points that I'm going to hammer home today is how specific the qualifications are for open roles. And that's in part because LinkedIn has made it possible for recruiters to find extremely specific profiles. LinkedIn Recruiter, LinkedIn Corporate Recruiter, there's Recruiter and Recruiter Lite, but Corporate Recruiter is the most sophisticated candidate sourcing tool on the planet. And today I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like and just how powerful it can be. But before you take my word for it, tell you a little bit more about what I do and what I've done. I've worked with some of the hottest startups in Silicon Valley and beyond. And one of the things that I am the best known for is my sourcing. I'm also a preferred vendor for a bunch of the top VCs. So today I'm going to walk you through the ins and outs of a recent search that I completed. And then we are going to look at a job description and talk about what an ideal candidate would look like for that role, with the goal of helping you identify what you would need to put on your profile to attract that recruiter. And we'll leave some questions at the end, but please don't hesitate to ask them throughout the presentation. Christine's monitoring the chat, and yes, I can see them this time, but I'm not reading while I'm presenting, so you just interrupt me. Okay, so let's start with an example. I recently helped my client fill an open director of agency partnerships position. They tried to fill it internally, but after several months of no success, they asked me to help. To their credit, it was a very challenging role, which we'll talk about why in a minute. But this is an excerpt from the job description. And like every job description ever written, it only gives you a vague idea of what the company is really looking for, but it's a starting point. Here, I've highlighted what qualities ended up being the most important in this role, which ones ended up not being. And in gray, we just have things that are just kind of assumed for a role like this. So the most important thing for this role was finding someone who was comfortable with high velocity, low average contract value sales. It's a completely different motion than enterprise. And my client already has over 2,500 partners, and their direct sales ACV is around 10,000. The problem is, this is one of the hardest parts of the search, is that most companies that have partnerships teams have only one or two partners that are extremely enterprise and bring in a ton of revenue. So people with this profile are just very few and far between. Funny thing is, SMB wasn't listed on the job description. E-commerce was 3 times. And that actually didn't end up being something that we were looking for. And this happens a lot. Job descriptions are written when the role first opens up, and over time, the ideal candidate profile changes as the recruiter and the hiring manager speak with more candidates, learn more about the market. And in this case, we dropped e-commerce experience because my client already has one of the strongest partner programs in the e-commerce space, with the exception of maybe one or two, and they really needed to find somebody who could help them up level. The reason why I'm talking about this is because I want to underscore the importance of customer size, especially for go-to-market roles. That's not to say that industry experience isn't important, it is, but oftentimes my clients and I need to get creative and think about what adjacent industries might also be relevant. Other things besides customer size that we talk about are things like customer behavior, buying patterns, business priorities, and buyer personas. So as you're thinking about what roles you might be most competitive for, start with industry and then broaden from there. Christine's chatting. The customer size matters for every kind of role, even if you're in the back of the house, engineering, operations, et cetera. And that's absolutely right. Second thing we were looking for was leadership experience. This person was going to inherit a team of 11 and then scale from there. And also, one of the people that this new hire was going to manage already had 6 people on his team. So we needed somebody with more leadership experience than that. But as I mentioned, partnership programs tend to be very, very small. And so a lot of times, so then the teams are very small. And a lot of times those candidates that I was looking at, even with director titles, were actually individual contributors. This is important because whenever I'm hiring for leadership roles, the size and scale of teams that candidates have led is so important. But most people don't specify those sizes, or how many people were on their team. Did they manage managers? What were the personas? That's one of the biggest things, that if you are a manager right now and you don't have, or a team leader right now and you don't have that data point on your LinkedIn, update it. Third thing, company stage, also something that I often look for whenever I'm doing a search. We needed somebody who had both built partnerships teams from the ground up and at scale. The early stage experience was important because we need somebody who's hands-on, who can execute and not just delegate. This can be a hard quality to find in people that only have late stage experience. For a partnerships role as well, he really wanted somebody who has built a partner program at a company that isn't a brand name. It's a lot easier to attract partners when you're, Apple or Salesforce. You're already the pretty girl at the party. And then we also wanted somebody with that later stage scale experience, because we wanted them to be able to push them beyond where they're currently at. But finding someone with both is rare. So we said this before as well, but if you're at startups, always, as best you can, share what stage the companies are that you've worked for. Revenue, if you can, if it's publicly shared information. Funding rounds are usually always public. Headcount is pretty safe, but definitely an important data point. So this is what LinkedIn Corporate Recruiter looks like. There are a ton more filters than a normal LinkedIn account. And I'm going to talk about specifically what filters I used for this search. So these tend to be the filters that I use the most. Job title, location, and keywords are the ones that I lean the most heavily on. And then I tend to, in any given search, I'll do a bunch of different combinations of a lot of the other filters. So for this search, obviously we were looking for somebody in partnerships. There were 3 locations that we were looking at. And then for keywords, breaking it down again into those 3 priorities that I just described, SMB, basically I tried any synonym, abbreviation, or related term that I could possibly think of. And then I also included HubSpot and PartnerStack, because both tend to serve SMB businesses. So this is a little reminder that you should include all tech tools that you use, even if you don't think that they're important. They may be in unexpected ways. Management experience was the hardest to source for. Terms like manage or manager or leadership don't strongly correlate with people who have actually led teams. And like I said, people don't specify, how many people are on their team anyway. So that was something that I had to qualify later most of the time. And then company stage, you can see I primarily used terms that pulled profiles that were more likely to give me this type of detail rather than, and I did sometimes do like series A, series B, but like revenue ranges and stuff, you just kind of have to look at the profile. Other keywords that I tend to use often are SaaS, ARR, NRR, ACV, just to find people with SaaS experience. And then I'm always looking for top performers as well. So I tend to search for like percentages or anything that might suggest quota attainment. So I think it's also helpful for you to understand where my head's at when I'm sourcing. So occasionally I'll charge a retainer or an engagement fee, but the bulk of my fee depends on one of my candidates receiving and accepting an offer. And a big part of the value that I provide lies in saving my clients time. So optimizing each stage of my funnel is really important. And every candidate that I send to my client that's not a good fit is basically a wasted half hour where they could be doing something else productive. So I'm very protective over my clients' time. And I apply that same philosophy to my own schedule. So looking a little bit closer, I looked at least 2,000 profiles. And this is after doing a very specific search with those very specific filters. And I only reached out to about 4% of those profiles. They had to be people that I believed had a very high likelihood of being qualified enough, interested enough, at the right comp level to increase the likelihood that they would be the one to get hired. I have an unusually high response rate, partly because I find people who are a strong mutual fit. And then once they respond, I typically qualify further. So team size and SMB in this case were ones that I asked a lot of questions about before jumping on a call. And of the 20, I only moved 7 forward. This is another slide from the last workshop. So if you were there, this should look familiar. But this is what profiles often look like when I'm sourcing. And it's pretty frustrating. Part of the reason why I'm doing all of this. It could very well be the case that this person is a good fit for the role that I'm sourcing for, but I can't tell either way. And so when I see a profile like this, I'm going to move on. This is like my dream profile. This is my buddy, Jason. It is packed with information about company revenue, industry, team size, customer size, and a whole host of accomplishments. And so he may not end up being the right fit for the role, but he's more likely to show up in search results and make a strong impression. And then from there, I can fairly decisively figure out whether or not it's worth it to have a conversation. And just to round out this slide, I want to call out a couple of things. My client did have this role posted, and 103 people applied over the course of the 65 days that I ran the search. And I reviewed all of them. According to my contract, I would have gotten paid had one of them gotten hired, but none of them were qualified. Again, just underlining the specificity of these roles. The other thing I want to mention is that this candidate that I found was not just a good fit, he was such a good fit that the CRO changed the title from director to VP in order to increase the offer. And he used up one of his 2 annual wildcards where he can hire someone who works remotely. Key takeaways here. Again, like I said, these ICPs are very, very, very specific. This is more true the more senior the position is. And if you want a chance of landing one of these highly sought after roles at a startup that's growing quickly, then you have to help me connect the dots between what I'm looking for and what you can offer. And then lastly, the stronger of a fit you are for the role, the more leverage you have in negotiations. This is how you get higher compensation. And that means you first need to understand exactly what makes you stand out from the next guy. You also have to use that to your advantage, which I know is easier said than done. And I'm always harping on how important it is to include a ton of information on your profile, but trying to figure out what information you should include can be pretty daunting. So Christine and I have created a bunch of different resources that come at this problem from different angles and, different formats. But yeah, the hardest thing is really figuring out what sets you apart. So for those of you who want more individualized attention, we are hosting a masterclass next month. We'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end. But today, in the spirit of thinking like a recruiter, we're going to do a live exercise with some help from Blake. So Blake, do you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you.
So Blake is an accomplished CSM, and he has generously dedicated his time today to help us out. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Blake. I've been a CSM for probably around going on a little over 6 years now, specifically the last 4 within the healthcare space. Was recently a part of a round of layoffs at my company. So that's kind of what puts me into this position of looking for something new, but really just was kind of new to the whole LinkedIn space. I'm not really into social media, so the social media aspect of it wasn't really my cup of tea. But after making certain changes that Christine and Sarah suggested, I've seen a huge uptick in traction with my LinkedIn profile. So kind of that's why I'm here today, just to learn a little bit more to see what else I can do.
Cool. And to be my guinea pig. I appreciate it. So Blake, I asked you to come prepared with a job description that caught your eye. And this is the one that you chose. Curious, first of all, how did you find it? Like, what job boards do you typically use? And what did you like about this role?
Yeah, so I've tried pretty much all the job boards out. I've primarily been using LinkedIn job search, which was where I found this one. But yeah, I've had the best luck through LinkedIn. I really chose this one because, one, it met my basic qualifications of healthcare, being in the healthcare field. It was an enterprise level role, which I'm kind of looking to get back into. It's fully remote, but outside of that, I felt like I met the basic qualifications. I thought it would be a good fit, so that's kind of why I chose this one.
Very cool. Very cool. You mentioned healthcare, enterprise. Is there anything else that stood out to you that you think that a recruiter might be looking for?
Specifically, I think my years of experience and just my experience with implementations. I know that this role listed that you're kind of going through the onboarding process. I'm not quite sure how in depth you're involved in that, but I do have an implementation experience. So I thought that was kind of something that I thought recruiters would pick up on. And then just kind of like my basic qualifications through what I've been doing through CSM work, and I thought that it kind of matched perfectly.
Cool. Spot on. So Christine threw the job description in the chat if you want to look at the full thing while we go through this exercise, or if you want to follow along with your own job description, that works too. So what we're going to do is build an ideal candidate profile, kind of like I did in the real example earlier. And then we're going to build a keyword list that matches that ICP. And then from there, we'll think of some synonyms for those keywords. So building the ICP, there are 4 things I want to think about. First is, what is the scope of the role? So what is this person doing? Second thing is, how is performance going to be measured? In other words, why are they hiring this person? What do they need to accomplish in the role? The third is, what do they need to know? Could be industry related knowledge, technical tools. And then the fourth, and specifically because this one has kind of something extra, is, are there any other themes that come up? And so what I pulled is, in terms of scope, I mean, it's everything that Blake mentioned: enterprise customer success management, right? And then there's also a onboarding training piece, voice of the customer, those kinds of things, QBRs that typically go with enterprise. And then performance, I pulled out customer satisfaction, health metrics, product adoption, retention, growth and expansion. Those are typical CS keywords, but very important to always include. And then in terms of, what does this person need to know? So lots of references to healthcare in this job description. Familiarity with EHR systems, electronic health record, is that right? CRMs, similar tools, and then it said nice to have is digital health solutions, chronic disease management, stuff like that. And then in this case, the reason why I created that 4th option is because the company values in this job description are just like screaming through. Most startups talk about like their culture or their family or whatever, but this one talks about it in multiple places. So just keeping in the back of your mind, what do they care about? Teamwork, innovation, mutual respect, equity, entrepreneurial mindset, embracing change, and gratitude were the ones that they mentioned. Second step is, okay, let's identify some keywords. And then I also created some related keywords to the ones that are actually on the job description. So in terms of role scope, the ones on the left here are keywords that are actually on the JD. And then actually I just used Gemini, which I've kind of made a hard switch from ChatGPT myself, but you can use any LLM or your brain to come up with synonyms. So things like enterprise. So in my last, in the example of that last search, that very first thing that I was looking for was SMB. And so low touch, automated, scaled, thinking of all of those synonyms to find somebody with those on their profile. The more synonyms you have for enterprise, key accounts, high touch, complex sales, things like that are going to make you more likely to show up in those search results. And then I did the same thing with accomplishments. What are you expected to accomplish, and how will it be measured? So a lot of these are related to health metrics. Could be time to value, could be customer lifetime value. So kind of the same exercise here. And then the same thing for knowledge. Here I went a step further. So again, healthcare, patients, proactive patient care, chronic conditions, those are all really highly emphasized on this job description. And then because they're industry related, I actually went to the website and then I pulled up a lot of the keywords that are listed there. And that's actually what I do a lot of times when I'm sourcing for a role and I'm not familiar with the industry. Like I was doing a search for strong DM and they're in the enterprise security space. And I just pulled a lot of the keywords from their website in order to find the right candidates. And then EHR integrations, those are EHRs that they're actually integrated with. You should be doing the same thing with CRM. So Salesforce, HubSpot, Insightly is a CRM, right? There's a bunch of them out there. So trying to think of all of the options here. And then once you have this larger list of keywords, then you try to figure out, okay, which ones are relevant to me, right? And which ones do I have metrics that I can speak to? This fourth factor, I mean, I'm always saying that, like, I think it's a lot more important to have hard skills rather than kind of wishy-washy things, because that doesn't tell me anything. Like, soft skills, I'm going to evaluate in an interview, and also like in references and things like that. But again, I think that this is still important to keep in mind, is how important their values are, so that when you are speaking to people in an interview, that you leverage this in conversations and maybe start to tailor your responses to that a bit. So things to keep in mind here is as as we saw in my recent search, job descriptions aren't always accurate. But by building your profile loosely based off of an ideal role, you're more likely to include the type of information that's going to attract the right recruiters, because there's probably going to be another similar role out there. But again, it's hard to just kind of think about what it is, how are recruiters actually thinking about these searches, and what are they looking for? So that's really all I had today. Just wanted to, again, plug this masterclass that we're doing that is starting to fill up, which is exciting. Christine, do you want to tell them a little bit about what's in the masterclass?
I would love to. So for all of you, we are going to be hosting a live cohort-based masterclass where you're going to go through 4 weeks of individualized instruction from Sarah and I. So if you like this webinar and you like the thought of working with us, then that's great. And if not, maybe not for you. And we will be effectively walking you through step by step to help you overhaul your LinkedIn. And we've been testing this out with some folks. And what we're finding is that when these changes are made in the right way, people are instantly seeing outreach from recruiters, including people who've never received the right kind of recruiter outreach in their career. So it has been a game changer for a lot of people. And that's why we feel strongly that we want to be able to build it out. And as Sarah mentioned earlier, we also have a lot of really wonderful free resources that you all can go check out at any time. So if you want to go it alone, if you want to try something out, dip your toe in the water, we have all the guides, checklists, we have pre-recorded webinars. So lots of great free resources as well. But would love to just pause, I think, Sarah, and transition to some questions, which I see Peter pop one in here, unless there was something else that you had that you wanted to close with.
Yeah, just the last thing is we also are doing a lightning course, which is going to be frankly similar content to the last webinar, but we're hosting the masterclass on a platform called Maven. And these lightning courses that they offer are free and basically just kind of give you a sense of what you would be getting from the course. So you can check that out. And you can also find us under the exec track that they're featuring this month. So, but yeah, that is all I have. Guys, thank you so much for being here. You can find me and Christine on LinkedIn. I will also be sending out a recording and a slide deck. Appreciate the time, and don't hesitate to reach out with any questions and check out some of those free resources. Have a good night, guys.